All right, welcome back. Welcome back. It's Saturday, 8:30 Central Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. I appreciate y'all joining me again. We're here back once again. We show up Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, right, for you all. We're going to end up changing it up a bit. Good evening, good evening. Eventually, we're going to do Monday and Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays, right? Welcome in the building, you guys. I'm coming live, and we're sharing the knowledge, whether it's from me or different individuals that I look up to. Welcome. We're coming here live, showing up for you guys, right? And you guys are taking nuggets. I mean, if you're really taking it in, taking it to heart, taking it to your, taking it to your mind, right? Wherever really like decide within yourself to make a decision. Some people think with their minds, some people think with their hearts. Whatever you're taking it in, hopefully it's having an impact on you and allowing you to progress in life. That's what it's all about, right? And here on the Fred Effect, we talk about building the mindset in order to take the proper actions to get the results, and hopefully those results lead to the success that you so desire. And success is different at different levels, you guys. So I really appreciate y'all joining in once again. Welcome back. We're gonna talk about relationships, right? Maximizing your opportunities through authentic relationships. Good evening. So you guys, I start off by sharing a story, and then we go into questions, and I'll provide some answers, right? These questions allow me to understand what direction you want to go. And the questions that you ask, hopefully you're able to get the answer that you're looking for, to move the needle, to close some gaps, right? It's a lot going on, and I'm not going to go into too much details about what's going on in the world, but it definitely involves relationships, right? So we all got to get better at relationships so we can live a better life. We can't escape people. People are everywhere we go, right? People make up businesses, people make up organizations, people make up all of our experiences. So we definitely want to get better at building relationships. We definitely want to get better at communication, right? Because it all makes a difference, right? So maximizing your opportunities through authentic relationships. Relationships has always been a big part of my life, and I want to say I started building strong relationships. I like, as far as back as I can remember, it was in school with friends. Finding like-minded friends, whether if it was like through sports or just a love of academics, right? That's where it first started, right? Outside of my family, I want to say, outside of my siblings. I mean, I had two brothers and two sisters, right? So that was like my first interaction with people, but outside of my family, it was in school. And I know most people can relate to that, right? That, we made friends in schools, or we didn't make friends in school, just based off of, how we were as individuals and how authentic we were, right? And then, progressing from there, it was, in work, coworkers, right? And that coworker relationship can be, different, right? It can be good or bad starting off. But we learn different skills about how to communicate, right, with our coworkers, with our managers, and whatnot. This is going to be what we make of it, right? Whatever questions you ask, I'll be able to go into more details about how I build authentic relationships in order to optimize my opportunities, like, in the present and in the future, right? Because you don't just think about now, you have to think about where you're trying to go, right? So I've been able to leverage mentorships, sponsors, right, in order to not only do my best at where I'm at in life, whether if it's work or not, but also in the future, right? Future career opportunities, or future investments, right? Through real estate, through the stock market, right? I'm always thinking about how am I getting the most of the relationships that I have now, and I can add to relationships to be able to, grow them for the future, right? So that was just a quick spill. I didn't give much details, but hopefully through the questions, I'll be able to shine more light on to how I'm able to build authentic relationships. Go ahead and start submitting questions based off the questions. I can kind of feel at where your mind is, in regards to building personal relationships or building professional relationships, or building relationships for the future. Go ahead and start shooting those in, and go ahead and get a bunch flowing for me, so I can be able to gauge on how quickly I'm gonna answer questions. I'm not going to force our time here today. We're all very familiar with relationships, but just want to like get a new perspective on how I've been able to manage relationships, and hopefully able to take away something on how to build stronger relationships within your life, right, on a personal level or professional level. All right, so let me make sure I got 2 questions in front of me. Keep those questions coming. I'll be able to take the first one here. All right, good. I see a couple questions right there. So appreciate that. What are some signs that a relationship is built on trust, not just convenience? Okay, I don't know about convenience as much. Okay, I can relate to convenience a little bit because I had one encounter about that, right, on a personal level. But most of my relationships have been built on trust. 95%, 99%, because I don't really see any other type of relationship to have, but for it to be, trust. If I'm in a relationship, I treat it very seriously, and I can only really take it seriously if I trust, right? Trust is not a light topic for me. It's challenging for me to trust anybody. So, and I know people have a hard time trusting, period, right? So, most relationships should be built on trust. Maybe, convenience, kind of comes into play if it's convenient to build a relationship with coworkers because they are your coworker, right? They're conveniently in a relationship with you, whether you want to go deeper in a relationship or not. Once you have a coworker, that's a relationship, right? Just by type of coworker. Another convenient relationship are parents and siblings, right? But we choose on how far we're going to develop those relationships through the trust that we feel, or the alignment that we have with those people. Another convenient relationship could be, as outside of your family, is maybe like a roommate, right? You're in the same space, you're roommate, so you're within a certain relationship, and you guys have like certain ways that you communicate and whatnot. Those are I think just by having a title, that makes a convenience of relationship. But you determine how far you go in that relationship based off the respect and level of trust that you have. But I don't recommend just leaving it as relationship based off convenience. Like, I don't recommend that. I recommend that you build a relationship as far as you can go, but you kind of get a feel for what the other person wants as well. And if it's not a deep relationship, you just optimize it as much as you can. You might not have a deep relationship with the person, but you're as coworkers, you work well in a team because they cover you and you cover them. But it might not be on one of those, like, you can talk about your weekend with them, you can talk about your family with them. It might not be that, and that has to be okay. What I'm saying? If you're a leader and you're trying to optimize, you have to adjust. You have to be flexible and know that every coworker is not going to be the one that's going to hee ha ha with you, but they're willing to be a good team player with you to work towards the common goal, right? So that's what we have to understand first and foremost about relationships. They're not all going to be the same. Some are going to be built on trust, and some are just going to be titles, and you have to work within a certain, relationship frame based off that particular environment that you're in. All right, and that's going to be healthy for everyone involved. Okay, once you identify, you become aware of what the relationship really is. Okay, can you share a time when a genuine connection led to an unexpected opportunity? Okay, yeah, most of the time, I'm always looking to have a genuine connection. So I can just think about, when and like most of my relationships turn into a unexpected opportunity, because opportunities can be small or big, right? So I could think about an unexpected opportunity is having an additional conversation with them, outside of our initial conversation, right? You don't have to like think that all the relationships are going to like turn into whatever you think that is big. Just having relationships in general is good, really good. And it says a lot about yourself if you're able to have genuine relationships, 5 plus 10 plus years, right? Because you're able to see a lot about a person, and they're able to see a lot about you. So maintaining those type of relationships is kind of unexpected. I mean, I don't really think a lot of people have multiple decades worth of relationships, you know what I'm saying? Because people just change over time. So um I think when you go into a genuine relationship, you don't really have to have high expectations, but just to be able to have a conversation that goes well, and to hope that you're able to have another really good conversation in the future. That's the most you can ask for a relationship. um you know, that's the most that you can expect. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't expect much more. Anything else from that is good. But just know that you are enough. You don't have to have relationships in order to grow. What you've acquired through just seeing people and whatnot could be all that's necessary. But don't think so much of a relationship taking you to the next level. If it happens, it happens. But it's best to keep expectations low with most relationships, right? Um, so I just wanted to like put that there, because you don't want to be in a relationship looking to take, right? You should just think about a relationship as an opportunity to give, right? You give something, and when they give back, you see it as a mutual beneficial relationships, and it just continues to happen like that. Most people try to like downplay transactional relationships, but if you don't see a transaction and in any of your like long-term relationships, you're kind of fooling yourself. It doesn't have to be a transaction in like objects, or like monetary or anything like that, but it could be a transaction in energy, right? When I'm giving good energy and I get good energy back, it's a transfer. Transaction is transfer, execution of something that happens, right? On both ends, right? So most long-term relationships are transactional. Even with like a child, right? I don't really hear the transactional thing anymore, because it's just like I'm not around people that be like minimizing the art of mutual beneficial relationships. I think people who are talking about transactions probably the one that just wants to receive all the time. You know what I'm saying? So but like let's think about like the purest relationship between a parent and a child, right? I have a baby girl, and our relationship is I give time, and she shows me love. It's just like that's good enough. But it's a transfer of me giving something, and then something happens in return, allows me to continue to give. It doesn't I like expect anything. Like, those are like the purest relationships where you don't expect anything. I'm saying that you should kind of have that for any relationship, right? Just to be able to have another conversation with somebody, if you enjoyed it the first time, it should be good enough. And so one of the purest relationships is between parents and children, right? Because parents shouldn't expect anything from their children, but just that the parent is giving time, and then the child appreciates it. Like that's what a child wants most is time. And then what a parent wants when they give time to their child is just like gratefulness and gratitude, appreciation, respect. Like, and it doesn't have to exceed anything more than that. Like that's like good enough. And if we can like transfer that into other type of relationships, personal, professional, then I think we'll live happier lives, right? Next question: what does authentic really mean to you when it comes to building relationships, especially in a professional world full of networking? Okay, authentic is for me not expecting anything from them, right? On a professional level, when I'm networking, and I'm giving out my card, right? I'm just if I gave out my card, if I gave out my number, like I'm just looking to continue that genuine connection that I felt during the time that we were networking. Like I just, if I feel aligned and connected, like I'm basically saying I want to hear more from you, and I want you to hear more from me. Like I want to stay in touch, right? Um, and so authentic is just like you know, being real. Like, do you really want to continue the conversation, continue a relationship with them? That's authentic. Like, it doesn't really have to be any deeper than that, right? Authentic is, you're present in the moment, you're talking to them, and then, after the conversation, you want to continue them or you don't. That's like the first level of being authentic, right? Be who you are when you're having a conversation with them. And then, if you want to have another conversation with them, um, it's important that you were being who you are so that next time you meet, they'll get the same you and you'll get the same them, on both ends. That's what authentic means to me. It doesn't really have to be deeper than that. Authentically talk about what you're doing in your profession and where you want to go, just being self-aware about who you are, what you have to offer. And both ends, if you see yourself aligned and headed in the same direction, or you can help them or they can help you, then that allows for conversations in the future. And it doesn't have to be like, okay, the first conversation, oh, for sure, it's going to go somewhere. It could be on the second conversation, right? It's okay for someone to fill out the connection. It doesn't have to be locked in right away. It doesn't have to be locked in on the second conversation. It doesn't have to be locked in on the third conversation. Like, be okay with whatever happens. Be appreciative of the time that you spend with that person, right? Because they could be anywhere. They could be spending time doing something else, right? You got to be respectful on both ends. Okay, so that's what I want to say about that, like with being authentic. How do you stay intentional about building authentic relationships that align with your values and long-term vision? Okay, so how you do that, you have to know your values, right? You have to know your long-term vision. You have to write it down. You have to repeat it multiple times. And once to yourself, and then, as you do that, it's going to come out of your mouth, right, to someone that needs to hear it, right? And then from there, you can align, like, within the LaFred effect, right? If I'm saying something that aligns with you, you stay connected and we grow together, right? But you got to know what's important to you. You got to know what's real to you, right? You got to be real with yourself. And that's how you continue to grow and, develop long-term relationships. I have several of decade plus relationships, right? I actually was raised by a single teenage mother. So my dad, that's been on here twice, wasn't, there, the whole time that a lot of the development years, what I'm saying? He can't really, we got the same genes, what I'm saying? And I respect him. He respects me, and we have a lot in common through business and stuff like that. So we have, authentic relationships through our commonality, our interests and whatnot. But I'll say, how we started building relationships when I was 18. and I reached out to him. So, now so I include him as a decade relationship, over a decade relationship, because it's more like a friendship. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a father son type thing. Like I respect him as my dad, but it's not like my mom. And even like as I gotten older, I kind of look at my mom different too. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm very responsible, so I don't like depend on anybody to set me straight or anything like that, right? I just do my best to add value to their lives, as much as they did, to bring me into this world. Okay, so like with my dad, I met him really at 18, for real. So that was 13 years ago, right? So we've we're that's one of my longest relationships, right? 13 years. As like friends, and we haven't done a deal together, but potential business partners. I just, I like our friendship. I like, how we bounce ideas off of one another. We have a really good, we're very aligned with our perspectives and how we think and whatnot. Other long-term relationships started off as mentorships. Actually, like my first three mentors are still my, like we're like friends today. Um, I had a mentor back in 2012, so I've known him over 13 years, right? My first mentor was back in like 2007, 2008, and he's an older white male, and he really had an impact early on in my life. And through his program I learned about engineering, right? It was like building Lego robots, and I did so well in the program that he offered me a scholarship, right? And it was within the state, and I moved away and whatnot, but we've remained good friends. He came to my college graduation and came to a football game back when I was in high school. And I reach out, whenever I need to update him and what. I've been over his house, slept at his house. Older white man. Actually, he's 84 now, 84. So most of my relationships are long term because I see a mutual beneficial relationship. So I'll keep in touch. Most people, most of the time, I reach out more than other people reach out to me, but it's okay because I see the value in reaching out to people. There are those that reach out to me as much as I reach out to them, and I really appreciate that even more because I am a human, not only a human, I'm like a superhuman, and I pay attention to what like really like makes a difference, in relationships. And I feel like what makes a difference for me, and being a giver that I am, is seeing that people give just as much as me, or just as generous as I am, with their time, right? So I got a brother on my dad's side that he reaches out just as much as I do, and I really appreciate about that about him. Our genes are strong, so we have a lot in common as well. So when we have a conversation, we just pick up like like we just spoke yesterday. Got a good brother that I met in college back in 2012. I was his best man. He was my best man. Um, and we're like soul brothers. Things happen like on the same time for us both. We're both very successful in our careers. We're both in the aerospace industry. We both went to the same college. We experienced the same things, in life. So uh, what else? My mentors become friends. I meet new mentors. When I go to different companies, I'm quick to look for a mentor. People are very much interested and important in my life because of the questions that I ask, and taking initiative to connect with people through networking and whatnot. So that's what I want to say about building authentic relationships, whether it's or professional. And if you're thinking long term, right? Like that's why I was hinting at all my, like, a lot of my relationships are like 10 years plus, because once I understand my values and I hear their values, then we can like build together. All right, next questions. How can we deepen existing relationships without it feeling transactional or forced? Okay, so like we're all looking for relationships. We're all looking for support. each human being gets the same thing out of relationships, right? And that's just knowing someone cares about them. And with my existing relationships, I don't shy away from talking about deep stuff. So, be vulnerable, right? When you've had a relationship for 3+ years, 5+ years, right? You know, I don't wait until that point. I'm quick to have intentional relationships with people. I have intentional relationships with strangers. There was one stranger that I was about to get lunch, and they was getting lunch with me. Middle-aged white man. We was just talking about hiking, right? I was asking him, I asked him a question. We got to talk about hobbies and stuff like that. But after like talking about hobbies, eventually, I asked what he does, and then he told me he was an engineer and he started his own business, right? And that's got me excited because my background is in engineering, and I've started a business and I want to continue to create businesses and whatnot. So just having like a regular conversation with somebody, not expecting it to go anywhere, but then eventually learning about different things you have in common. Like he was kind of inspiring me to like start running like marathons and stuff like that, because I have been hearing about it a lot. My good buddy, that I was his best man. He was my best man. He's about to do a marathon. So eventually, I have never really done a marathon, walking or running. I used to be very competitive, so eventually I end up doing something like that. But with ensuring that it doesn't really feel transactional, even though it is transactional. Um, Transactional is different from force. So to ensure that it doesn't really feel transactional, just be authentic and be real. Don't expect anything from it. Now, as far as force relationships, those are the things you should stay away from. If you feel resistance and going to a deeper level, just keep it how it is. And what I'm saying? It's not always easy to do that because you kind of want relationships to be in a certain way, especially if you're like coworkers, for an example. You might want to be able to say good morning to them every day and wish them a good weekend. But if you're just not on that level, if it's just like you're covering for them, or they covering for you, that's a really good relationship. That's a good, really good co-worker relationships where you have each other's back. What I'm saying, you're willing to answer questions and help them to keep moving the needle. That's good enough. You don't have to force it to be more than that. As a leader, you got to be flexible to know what co-worker relationships are going to be what. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to talk about your children or your family with every co-worker. You don't have to talk about what you're going to do over the weekend, or what type of weekend you had with all co-workers. It could just be you work well together based off of what you employed to do, and that's good enough. Okay. So don't try to force it, right? Don't try to force mentorships. If you're in a conversation with a mentor and it's like awkward having a conversation, it doesn't sound like that's a worthwhile mentor relationship or time well spent. It needs to be natural, just like I'm talking to you guys natural, just like a natural conversation. That's how things are good. That's how things are aligned. And it doesn't have to be long. Don't expect all relationships to be long term, because people change. You know what I'm saying? You could have a expiration date for certain relationships, and that's just how it is. It's actually just going to happen naturally like that. Everything should just be natural and not forced. It just kind of is what it is. Hopefully that helps. How can we turn everyday interactions like a quick chat or a comment on social media into something more lasting and real? Okay, now this is a good one. I recently just posted about me not being much of a small chatter or small talker. People might message me on DM me on LinkedIn. You know what I'm saying? And it's just to talk about any old thing. It's really hard for me to do that. It's really hard for me to do that. And it's happened on multiple occasions that I had to tell them I'm not much of a small talker. And they apologize and whatnot. I don't mean that, they did me any, I don't mean that, it's wrong for them to attempt to have small conversations and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to do that in person. But if you're doing that on social media, don't always expect that it's gonna go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? Because if it's like with a guy like me, I'm kind of like, what's up? How can I help you? You know what I'm saying? What sparks your interest to reach out? Okay. And it's kind of like we're kind of going to end it, because I'm not the type that's going to be on my phone just chatting, chit chatting like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm like a man of purpose. And that's just kind of how it is, right? But I'm like that in person too. You know what I'm saying? If I'm having a conversation, it's about something that I'm either learning or, I'm imparting into someone else. And that's just kind of how it is. Once it's a lot going on social media about, Israel and Iran. I don't want to talk too much about it. Only reason why I know about it is because this trading community is keeping updates. Not that I shouldn't be updated, but it's a lot of stuff that I don't learn about until the last minute. I'm pretty up to date about decisions that our government is making and whatnot. But I'm not a proponent of going too deep and talking about it. But it's, and I don't talk about politics. So it's certain topics that really get people going and I don't really partake in it. So, that kind of prevents me from being distracted or just having, too many associates. Most of my relationships are, long-term relationships, and I'm okay with that because I like a simple lifestyle, and you're able to have a simple lifestyle based off the relationships that you have or the company that you keep. Okay, that's a big part of that. Okay, so hopefully that helps. But being able to have conversations in general, you got to be friendly. People can feel your presence through social media. So if you're a friendly person in life, you know what I'm saying? People are gonna like naturally attract to you on social media. And if you're outgoing, you're gonna be able to like, connect with people and uh you're comfortable with that because you'll naturally talk to a stranger, so you'll naturally invite somebody to connect with you. So you'll have a similar experience on social media as you would have in real life in my perspective, right? How can you cultivate connections that only open doors? Okay. How can you cultivate connections that not only open doors, but also prepare us for opportunities ahead? So it's not only opening doors, but you want to prepare for opportunities ahead. Okay, opportunities are kind of like doors, I don't quite understand that one, but uh I'm gonna just talk to cultivating connections. You know, if you value the relationship, do your part on reaching out. Of course, communication goes, both ways, right? But if you have an authentic relationship, you're not really thinking about that as much. You're not thinking about you reach out to this person more because it's just kind of like you value the relationship, you feel like it's mutual beneficial, so when you do reach out and you have a conversation, that did enough for you, right? And they can reach out whenever they need to connect with you, you know what I'm saying? So cultivating relationships for me is really just about you know connecting, just connecting. Whenever you think about somebody, you reach out and you connect with them. um you know that's really all you can do. You can just start the conversation. Reach out. That's the best way to cultivate a connection. Reach out, whether if it's your first time or your second time, just do it. All right. What do you think? Uh, what do you think is often undervalued in fast-paced business settings? Undervalued. Okay. Uh, what do I think is undervalued? Okay, I can tell you this. So, the timeshare industry. These are some really interesting people. Salesmen. Just think about salesmen in general. But these timeshare people are like on a whole nother level. I think they're better than car salesmen. These timeshare people, reason why they're better than car salesmen is because they're selling a dream of pleasure and enjoyment. So timeshare is basically like they're selling vacations, right? They're selling resorts, piece of it, right? They're selling a dream. right? We all love to vacation. Nobody, I never really heard about anybody who hate vacation. They might not vacation as much, but ideally, most people would love to take a vacation, right? So with the timeshare people, they kind of like feed, or they pull on that desire for the people, the what people have, the desire that people have for their future, right? And how they want to spend time with their family, right? In paradise where there's no stress and whatnot. So that's why I'd say that these folks are really tough. If you ever interacted with anybody like that, that's trying to sell you something based off of your emotions, they get really good at that. But what I do think is missing is, I think they should like have the product themselves, right? Just anything, whether if it's a car, they should have the car that they're selling. They should be experiencing whatever they're selling, whether if it's coaching, whether if it's branding, they or trading in the market, right? You shouldn't just be talking about stuff in theory. Oh, you would like traveling, you know what I'm saying? You should buy ahead of time. Travel, you should buy the experience ahead of time and experience it later. Okay, if they're doing it, how is it working for them? Because a lot of times, with the timeshare things, it's like you don't really have enough time to vacation, so you might not really get the most out of the purchase. Or with trading, if somebody's selling their material, right? Have they are they practicing it? Like, is that material that they're selling still valued, still the same? Is that information still valid, for today's economy, or today's market, uh market flow, right? Or market. So, nobody really knows the future, right? So recently, what's going on, between different governments, it could affect the market. So, some trading materials may not, apply to what's about to, transpire moving forward. Like, nobody could really talk about how to trade in COVID until, they went through it. So I think, with people selling, business setting, a lot of times, it's some, in order for business to run well, you have to like sell something, you have to make money. So in any aspect of making money, I think it would be better in a more authentic type of setting if the salesman is an owner or a user of the product. So when you're thinking about buying something, when you're thinking about if what you're getting is going to be of value to you, you should ask the salesman, how are they enjoying the product, right? And if it's kind of like be hesitant if they say, well, I've never experienced it before. You know what I'm saying? They can't relate to it, right? Because that means they can't really be as authentic. That's it's another level of being authentic when you experience the product, or you're applying whatever you're selling. Okay, that's really big because most people get, and even like a real estate agent, and they're selling, like, do you own a home yourself? You know what I'm saying? Because reason why you want to really take your time in a fast-paced business, or just assess the environment of a business, and what product they're selling, is because you can really get caught up. Like, for a house, that's a big purchase. A car, that's a big purchase. um Something that's tied to how you want to spend your time in the future. Whatever you're spending your time with is going to cost you a lot of money. So vacation, if you're saving up for a vacation, right, to really enjoy vacation, that's going to be a big commitment, right? So you need to understand how to really do it properly. And a lot of times, joining communities like this can help guide you in the right direction, or just like having mentorships with people that have been in a certain place, and you can ask them how they're managing it and stuff like that. You really want to have an idea before you get involved with anything that's going to take up too much time or cost a lot. You really want to do better at asking questions so you don't get caught up. That's what parents, that's what, having parents in life, is about, like they do try to look out for you, right? That's you know, being around people that you can trust. Um, that's where this comes into play as well. Like when I bought my first car, actually, um, I went with my pastor's husband. So my pastor during the time, um, well, I've had several pastors, but in this case, my pastor was a lady, and her husband went and helped me bought my first car. The first car, this is a good story. The first car that I really liked, one of the first cars, it had an engine light on. It was like a Nissan or something like that. And I was really excited about the car. I was just excited about getting the car in general. So I mean, I liked this car. It was black, and it just felt like a good first car. And because he was there, literally, I might have got the car if he wasn't there. He was like, buying a car with the engine light on, that's like a red flag. You really don't want to like have that trouble on the first. And like now I'm thinking about it, of course, but back then I was like 18 and I really couldn't see past engine light, check engine light. I thought that was something that I could be okay with based off the money that I had. Like I wasn't getting a brand new car, I was getting a used car, and I was thinking that was okay, because I didn't have a lot of money at the time. But he helped me get a really good car. I ended up getting a really good car, and it lasted me for a good amount of time until I got another car. So, um, what I'm trying to say there is having people that you can trust and lean on, and first time situations or tough situations is very important. Like it saves you a lot of headache, it saves you a lot of money, saves you a lot of time. Like find people you can trust, and and just having a genuine relationship with people that you can trust is very valuable. And it's just like a bonus if they've kind of been somewhere that you're trying to get to, right? Within their career, within their personal life, like if they got relationship advice they can give you, if they got like advice about purchasing something big like a house, a car, like you can't undermine relationships like that, right? It makes a big difference. And I value that so much. Like you guys applaud me on my wisdom and how well I'm put together and accomplishments and stuff like that. But and that is a part of my mindset. Nobody can really force me to have the right mindset. I make the choices. I make my own choices and make my own decisions. But I do lean heavily on my counselors, right? Counselors are people that I look up to, right? I allow them to counsel me, right? I have nobody on payroll that's counseling me and like my problems and stuff. It's really just like authentic relationships, and I get so much from it because I value their time, and I value their place in my life. So that's what I want to say to that. How can introverts or those who struggle with networking still build real connections? Okay, you're not the only introvert. You can feel being an introvert. You can feel who else is an introvert. Actually, one of my brothers that called me more than any other brother. Um, he told me he was an introvert. I actually didn't really notice he was much of an introvert because I'm not an introvert. I've never just been an introvert. Like I've been an extrovert, and now I'm more so an ambivert. Like I can pick and choose when I want to do more listening or be more enthusiastic. Right. I never just been an introvert, so it's kind of hard for me to know who's an introvert, especially because some introverts end up talking more to me than they do with other people, right? So it's kind of hard for me to tell who's an introvert because of kind of how I am. But an introvert should be able to spot another introvert, right? I would think. Um, it might not be the case, but you're not going to be the only introvert. Okay, so understand that as an introvert, what struggles you have. And then if you do see another introvert, know that you can connect on that level, right? You can talk about the elephant in the room, how challenging it is to network and, how networking makes you feel, you know what I'm saying? and just like talk, like really what people, how people develop the strongest relationships. And I can talk to it based off of multiple 10-year relationships that I have in my life. And I'm not that old. I'm 31. So multiple 10-year relationships, like not just like the high school. I don't have many high school. I got one buddy that I know back in high school, but most of them have been like in my college years and plus, because like, and I think that that's more valuable because it's like I'm mature and I can be, held accountable for my actions at that point. So I'm actually kind of knowing what I'm talking about at, the 18 plus. You know what I'm saying? Like I've made mistakes, I've learned a lot. I'm definitely way more wiser than my 18-year-old self. But the fact, some of the relationships that I built, or a lot of the relationships that I built after 18, that's been over 10 years, is like, um, it's of importance. Is whatever word I'm trying to come up with. So I would say that was another point I was going to make, but just like, reason why the relationships that I have that are like so long is because we have a lot in common. We don't argue really, like at all. There's a lot of my 10-year relationships that we haven't argued. Like I can just tell them how it is. Like I've had a long relationship with someone that's still going. Like I met them back in like 2012 when I was going to college, and she's like my spiritual grandma or something like that. She's a lot of different ways. She's very supportive. And I call her every now and then. She's probably in her 80s as well. A lot of older people like me because of my age and how respectful I am. But anyways, she's like in her 80s too. But anyway, she like told me about politics and kind of had an idea how I should vote. I ended up doing the opposite. I didn't even know how she wanted me to vote, but I ended up doing the opposite. And then she wanted to talk about it. And I told her straight up, I was like, that's not the relationship that we have. I'm not, this a relationship in regards to politics is not something I want to maintain. I was just straight up, we're this is what we're in a relationship for. I told them basically, how I intend to have a relationship with them, and if they're okay with that, moving in that direction, that we don't have to talk about politics. I'm just not that type of guy. And that was well received. We didn't argue about it. All my relationships that are 10 plus years, I can like say that we never really argued at all. And you know what I'm saying? That's kind of rare in personal relationships, but a lot of my personal relationships, and that's just the way it is. It's kind of rare to say that you never argue, but aim for that. Aim for a commonality, right? Because that's what I've seen across the board. A reason why we're such close friends for long terms, because we don't argue. We just agree on everything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying every relationship you have to agree on, or every strong relationship is always agreeing. Because I can think of one of my mentors actually that I've met since 2012, and he was like, he was my mentor, and he was like one of the greatest contributors to my education. I'll say we have like disagreed in certain different ways, right? But I'll say, and I'll give you an example of how we disagreed. So in my career, I haven't stayed at the same company, and he's been in the same industry for like his entire career, and many times he stayed at the same company for 5+ years, right? So he's all about be at a company and gain equity. Now I haven't been fortunate to do that, and I can say that it probably wasn't ever supposed to be that way, that I can just stay at one company, right? I've worked for like 7 different companies, and I've been able to be successful. But he was all about gaining equity in the company. So when I was telling him about my recent move from one company to the next, like within the last 4 months, right? Within the last 5 months, I've been with the company over 4 months now. He started off, I already know. He started off, how I feel. I'm like, I'm trying to like stop him while he's ahead. I'm like, hey, they closed the door on me. And then I told him how much of a blessing, like I got a severance package and all this stuff. He's like, oh, it's a blessing, dude. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know you want me to stay put in one spot and gain equity, because that's how he's done it. And I got mad respect for his career. He's the most successful person I know career-wise. He's a VP. He's doing very well. And I aspire to be an executive as well, if that's what the Lord has for me. So I value his advice, his perspective, but we didn't always agree. And that's one of the things, right? So I'm not saying you have to agree always, but majority of my 10 plus relationships, like 10-year plus relationships, 12, 13 years, we have a lot in common and we don't really disagree. And even if we come outside of a certain aspect of relationship, when I say, how I kind of want the relationship to be maintained, they respect it. You know what I'm saying? You got to know how you want to be treated, and, and vice versa. You got to treat them how they want to be treated. And then the relationship can be as long as you both allow it to be, you know? All right. So hopefully that helps there. How can we create opportunities for others through the relationships we already have? Okay, just be open to being a blessing. Always be open to give, to be looking for ways to help people. You know, have an eye for what you can do to add value to someone else's life, and it'll come easy, very easy. All right. What advice? Last question. Last question. I appreciate y'all tuning in. We come here and we're just looking to give, and I hopefully you guys have been blessed from the answers that I've given, and hopefully everyone in the community are inspired by one another. Iron sharpens iron. So I hopefully you guys are enjoying seeing the same faces and knowing that we're all growing together. All right, last question. What advice would you give to emerging leaders who want to build real relationships but feel pressure to prove themselves? Okay. That last part, right? Okay. Pressure to prove themselves. You don't have to prove yourself before having a real relationship, right? And if you're an emerging leader, a lot of times you've been building relationships along the way, right? And it's not by accident, based on relationships that you built, the people that you've met. Like, just like stay close to those who provide a mutual beneficial relationship, right? And there's going to be more relationships or relationship opportunities that come along the way, just by being who you are. If you're an emerging leader, you're taking in information, you're always growing, and you never know what doors that open up for you by just seeking to know more, seeking to do more for other people. Just by being who you are. If you're an emerging leader, if you have that level of mentality to not only improve your life but improve the lives of others, good things are going to come your way. So and as far as like proving yourself, I get it. You want to show that you are an emerging leader. You want to show, what value you bring. But, based off of the place that I'm in now, I might have felt like I had to prove certain things. And people might even say you haven't proven it. People might position themselves to say something to you, thinking that you might have to prove something. I'm here to tell you, you don't have to prove anything. At this point in my life, maybe my late 20s, definitely I'm in my early 30s now. I know for sure I don't have to prove anything to anyone. You know what I'm saying? Especially as an emerging leader, like, you've already made a lot of people proud, right? If you graduated from high school, you graduated from college, you got your own job, you're taking care of yourself. You already made a lot of people proud, or you're accomplishing your goals, you're pursuing your dreams, right? So people that you care about, and you've done some of the things that you heard growing up. A lot of times we end up doing the things that we heard, we saw, and we end up doing those things. A lot of people are already proud of us, so you don't really have anything to prove to anybody else. Now it's up to you to make yourself proud. Somebody on LinkedIn was like, a goal to aspire to do is to make sure that you're effing proud of yourself. Then that's like a really good place to be, when you're really proud of yourself. And that's what it's all about. Set your goals and hold yourself accountable. And, as you get closer and closer, right, as you take those small steps towards your goals, you should feel a sense of relief, a sense of gratitude, a sense of accomplishment, that you're doing what you set out to do, right? And that will relieve the pressure of you feeling like you have to prove something to somebody. Just do what you can, and eventually you'll build the confidence that you can just conquer the world, right? And it doesn't have to be conquering the full world, but just doing your part. We're all a part of this pie. We're all a part of this world. And as long as we continue to move the needle in our lives, we become a better person, and we allow the world to be in a better place as well. Like, this is that quote about, letting your light so shine. So you give unconsciously, you give other people permission to allow their light to so shine as well. That's what it's all about. Like, be who you can be, in that season, and continue to learn and grow, right? And it makes the world a better place. You guys, hopefully this has been another exciting and thoughtful and high information, high knowledge session for you all. We come here and we look to give, for the better outcome of the community, right? Here at the LaFreddy Fed, where we have real talk, go deep, and build forward. Until next time, stay focused, stay grounded, and above all, stay real. Peace.